Can you talk about like sure parenting without being permissive? Like, how does that work?
Permissive means throwing your hands up. I do nothing. I can't even do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. That's what permissive means. I am very active in parenting. Do I choose to let some things go and like watch what happens? Absolutely. But it is a very conscious choice. It is a very mindful decision to watch and see. It is not an abdication of the role. Punishments have nothing to do with permissiveness or not. Punishments have to do with creating suffering in other people, hoping that that will make them do better. It doesn't, unfortunately. It might make them in the moment stop something that is annoying to you, but it doesn't give them the skills to prevent that same thing from happening again. So then it just happens again and again and again and again and again and again and again. It's like enraging. And you think, why isn't this working? Like, I've punished you 100 times. You're still doing it. You're not learning. Right. Because if they could do better, they already would have. So we have to get really investigative and figure out why can't they do better in this situation? And a lot of times I'll hear like, okay, but they did it on Tuesday, so I know they can. Also, you know how to drive the speed limit. That doesn't mean that you always drive the speed limit. So, what factors are making it so that today, at this point, with this brain state, with these stressors, why is he not able to accomplish that same thing? What is that? And then what emerges is this gap between what we want them to do and what they are doing. We bridge the gap. That is very active parenting. It is very intentional. It is very involved. It is very mindful of where their brain's at, where our brain's at, what our goals are, what our real goals are, what our would like to be's are, what we can live with, what we can live without, what everything we're doing, how it's impacting them. And that doesn't mean in like a super paranoid, stressed out way of like, if I ever have any kind of tone to my voice, I'm going to ruin my children, because that's ridiculous. We're humans. I'm a very expressive person. Like my tone fluctuates. I am not the calm and mellow and gentle person that you see. That's not who I am. It's not who I'm ever going to be. And my children chose me. So I'm not going to pretend to be something that I'm not. If my kid is doing something that they literally cannot be doing, it is my job to either become that barrier or create a situation in which that is impossible to do, or figure out how is that happening, right? So you talked about name calling 1 week. How do we get to this point? How do we make it so that this strategy that they're using doesn't feel necessary to them, right? Because I can't actually control what comes out of their mouth. So to some ears, it's like, okay, but if you don't punish them for doing that, then you're just being permissive. No, permissive is literally ignoring it, saying nothing, and just letting them call each other a bunch of names. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I am solving the problem underneath that behavior so that the behavior is not necessary. Behavior in and of itself is just communication. It is a way to meet our needs. If they have a need that they think will be met with this strategy, my job as a very active, involved parent is to figure out what need are they meeting? What's another way they can meet their need? Why do they think this is the best strategy? And how do I make it so that strategy isn't the best strategy? And that kind of, mental effort is a lot. It's simpler to just be like, you know what, you're grounded. And it doesn't give them skills to do better. So then we do the same thing till they're 18 and then they leave and they still don't have those skills. I work with all of those adults who are like, my parents never taught me how to regulate anything. I'm like, same. And so my goal is to give them the skills so that they can do better, as opposed to just being annoyed that they're not doing better already.
Hmm.
Or leaving it up to them, right? It's very interesting. The hands-offness of more punitive styles is like, I'm just going to leave it to you to figure it out. I'll be mad and then you figure it out. And it's like they're learning how to people. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And part of that is just because that's what we had. Like, we didn't know what we were doing either. So a lot of times we shrunk ourselves, we got quieter, we got smaller, we got meeker. We're like, okay, I don't know how to communicate my needs to you in a way that you can receive, so I just won't have needs. That's a lot of people. Now, some people, those are more the internalizers. The externalizers got louder, harder, rougher, trying to demand their needs to be met. And neither one of those are actually healthy. What's healthy is to figure out, okay, you're struggling right now. I don't want to be called names. And at this exact precise moment, you are so far dysregulated, you have no control over your language. And I get that. We're going to regulate. Then we're going to talk about what you can do instead to let me know what you need that doesn't involve calling me names. Right? And we're going to teach those lessons. Discipline means to teach. Disciples were not recipients of consequences. They were the students. They were like, teach me how to be, what to do. If we want to make disciples of our children, we have to be that leader. Right? And so that is what S.U.R.E parenting is about. It's not about, meh, do whatever you want. I don't even care. It's about, oh, I see a problem. Let's figure out how to solve the problem.
How does boundaries fit into it?
Boundaries are essential. Boundaries is what I will or will not do. So if we like to use that word to mean control. So you can't have a boundary over what comes out of somebody else's mouth because you don't control that. You have a boundary over whether you stay present in it. So boundaries are about what I will or will not do. So if, if my child is, it's much, much easier to hold boundaries with small children because you literally become the boundary. My kid's climbing on the counter and I'm like, hey, you need to get down. And they just don't process that at all or choose not to hear me, whatever. Then I literally move their little bodies. You get down. I will move you because I don't want you there. If you're kicking me, I'm going to hold your feet because I don't want you to kick me. You can be mad. You can kick the couch. You can't kick me. I don't like that. You can even put your feet in my hands and push with all your might. There's control here. I'm not going to let you just like wallop me with your heels because that shit hurts. Okay. So much of our boundaries are nonverbal. It's what we will and will not do. And the interesting thing comes in that we often do not learn boundaries as children as far as like how to set and hold our own boundaries because we're not allowed to have any boundaries. So then as adults, we have boundaries with adults. Those are different than boundaries with children. These are our children. Yeah, if your best friend is being belligerent, you can just walk away and be like, you're an adult, figure that crap out. You certainly can walk away if you're feeling flooded and you cannot handle that moment of dysregulation with your child, but it is actually your job to help them to co-regulate at some point. So I'll hear sometimes like, well, if you're gonna whine, I'm not talking to you. Yes, that's a boundary. No, it's not a particularly productive boundary. Because if they could be not whining, they already would be. They talk normal all the time. If they're whining, something is starting to pull away from their regulation and they're looking to you to help them co-regulate. The way we learn to self-regulate is through countless episodes of co-regulation. And that is why so many adults who can grit their teeth and get through anger think that they're regulating. That's not regulating. That's holding on by the skin of your teeth. That's not feeling the feeling and allowing the energy to flow through you and moving that energy as it's needed and expressing what is needed and getting yourself to a calm, grounded state. That's self-regulation. That is something I didn't even begin to learn until I was like 28 years old. And so I am teaching that to my kids. And I view that as part of my job to teach them that. Part of that job is first sitting in the feeling. Like, this is what mad looks like. I don't need to make mad go away. I need to make sure everybody's safe. That's my job. I need to give you healthy ways to express mad. I need to maybe look back at this situation in a couple hours and go, how did we get there? Oh, he was angry. I need to make sure I have a snack planned before we start school. Because hangry children do not do school well. Right? So I take ownership of the part that I can control, accept the part that I can't control, and then fill in the gaps of learning where their skills need to develop more so that they can function as a healthy adult. I hope that answers the question.
Yep. Last question. Do you have something I can share with my husband so that he knows like your style and system?
He can watch this replay. I'll just clip this out, and if you don't mind, I'll have your question in it. Like, explain what is the difference between shared parenting and permissive parenting? Because I think that's a really important question, and it does get asked a lot. And there's a whole realm of parents who are like, yeah, no, I'm still using punishments in my family. Okay, that's your call. You get to make your choices for your family. I'm not saying you're going to ruin your kids. I'm not saying that, the world is over because you grounded your kids because they didn't do their chores. Like, fine. All I'm saying is it's not the most effective method to get your actual needs met. Same as them. They're using ineffective methods to get their needs met. You know what I mean? So that's really what it's about, is how do I told you earlier that the priorities, right? The relationship is the top priority. And this is part of why. One, it feels good. We need relationship. We want secure attachments. These are like the optimal goals of childhood. But also, at some point, every child does not give about their parents' consequences anymore. They get to a point where they don't care. You've tried to strong arm me and control me for so long, I'm done. There's nothing you can do to me. And now we have no influence. When we have a healthy relationship, we have influence in their life forever. Right? And because we are a healthy person and they can trust our opinions and they can trust that we actually value their input, we have the ability to sit and listen to their side of things. We have the ability to reflect back to them. We have the ability to hold space for what they're experiencing and bring in our knowledge and wisdom. They've experienced that for years and years and years. Even when they're 25, they will often come back and be like, you're good at this. I want your opinion on this. And not feel threatened. Like their autonomy isn't threatened because we haven't been overpowering their autonomy their whole life. So it's very much a long game. In the short game, it feels sometimes like a loss. You're like, my sister just, tells her kids no more video games and they just suck it up. No more crying. My kids are still throwing a fit. And it's like, your kids are feeling their feelings and her kids are suppressing their feelings. Have I ever taken video games away to stop something? Absolutely, I have. So please do not hear judgment when I'm giving this example. But did it give them new skills? No, it did not. It gave me a break for a second. And almost always, I'm like, okay, now I need to go back and figure out, like, how did that happen? Where the gaps are and where I need to teach to fill those gaps. And the video games really wasn't, it didn't have anything to do with the video games. It wasn't what it was about, So in the short term, it takes longer. It builds and it grows and it gets to a point where we actually have teens that we don't fight with. We have healthy communication with. Their brains are still exploding in growth. Their emotional center of their brain grows like the hare and their prefrontal cortex grows like the tortoise. So between 12 and 24, that adolescent period, it is an explosion of growth in the emotion center. So their feelings are so potent that they are overwhelming. You're going to have dysregulation. But when you have a foundation of respect and healthy communication, even in that dysregulation, this is temporary. Like, yeah, the kid slammed the door. I don't need to harass him about that. He's clearly infuriated. I don't even know what that word is. I know what he's doing right now. He is regulating himself. He is calming himself. And I know without a doubt that he's going to come back and say, sorry, Mom. He's going to take ownership and accountability. Do you know how many men need to learn how to take ownership and accountability? Probably women too. I usually hear the men's side of it. I hear the women complaining about the men's side of it. And I know that about my child. So yeah, he's dysregulated. Like, okay, that's a human experience. I'm safe in this. I don't feel, and he feels safe in it. He knows what to do. He knows he needs a break. He needs to go. That's how he processes. That's how my oldest processes. Takes a break. It's like, yeah. And he goes and he regulates. But he wouldn't be able to do that if I hadn't sat with him all of those times when he was super dysregulated at 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and helped him to make sense of that world of dysregulation. And also myself modeled, how do I regulate when I get really pissed off? And when I do act like a jerk, how do I come back and say, hey, that was inappropriate. You don't deserve to be treated that way. I'm very sorry that I spoke to you that way. This is how I was feeling. And what I should have done is this instead. And that's what I'm planning to do next time. You know, that process has given him the tools to use, and he's only 10. He has gotten more and more and more enjoyable as the years have gone on. And I have a couple of mentors whose kids are grown, and they don't have the traditional teenagers. They enjoy their teenagers because they speak to them like people. They're able to legitimately say, oh, we don't talk to each other like that. What's going on? And mean it. Like, that's truth, you know? And so it's for sure a long game. It's harder in the front end, but it makes the rest of the time that you have with your children so much more enjoyable, and it makes their life and their relationships with their adults in their life so much more enjoyable. So it's worth it.